We're joined now by Jake Crain from Crain and Company, who had himself one hell of a weekend out there in Tuscaloosa, Alabama versus Georgia. Buddy, I got to start off with that right out of the gate. So David Cohn, our good friend and your co-host, posted a video of when Ryan Williams caught the bomb and did the Circus Soleil on two defenders. It looked like y'all had one hell of a time being out there in Tuscaloosa and everything that y'all saw. How great was that atmosphere?
I mean, I don't know how it gets much better than that, not being in the stadium, right? I'm sure a lot of people watching this show have either, been to college and been at a college bar or a bar in general watching the game. We live streamed it. Just the ebbs and flows, and you could feel the air in that place when Bama was dominating, all of a sudden start to change so rapidly and so quickly. And it was just like a visceral thing. It was so loud in there, Blake. It's funny. They had, we were live streaming. They had the music playing. People were yelling and screaming. And I was like, there's no way anybody can hear us on the live stream, on the audio. So we're having to scream. Like Blaine can't even hear me, and he's right here. Cone can't even hear me, and he's right there. So we kind of just had to play off each other, and we've been doing this for so long. We got enough chemistry built where we can go on the road and win, even in a tough environment on offense. So it was, man, Blake, it was what college football is all about. Yeah. To me, it was everything that makes college football better than the NFL. Sorry, not sorry. Better than any other sport in the world, in my opinion, and doing it from a place, a college town, a town that runs on the university and really the football team. There's so much riding on the success of the football team. It was just real, man, and it was genuine. We've got to do it again. Shout out to Innisfree for having us. They had a great time. We had a great time. It was, and boy, we may have picked the best game to live stream we possibly could have. So we were happy about that.
No doubt. Well, your quote at the end, and we said this to you on Twitter, was your comment at the end was, "Welcome to the SEC." If I'm the marketing director of the SEC, I'm taking what you said there. I'm pulling that and putting it on Twitter because, dude, listen. There are small games. Like I think of the game that I went to in 11 in Tuscaloosa, LSU and Bama. Like you can't, that's a completely different thing. And going to Tuscaloosa in 19. I mean, that place in and of itself, man, it is absolutely insane to have. But I'm glad that y'all had a good time. What are your thoughts on that game, by the way? I know there's a lot to take away from it.
Well, there is, right? There's so many things. It was jarring early, right? And really through halftime and the beginning of the third quarter, it wasn't like Georgia was busting coverages. It wasn't like they did turn the ball over a couple times, but Alabama was just better than they were from a personnel standpoint. It looked like Georgia was getting beat the way that we are typically seeing Georgia beat teams. Even maybe if we don't have our fastball, we had you beat at birth, but everything was working for Alabama offensively and defensively. Really, Alabama was sitting in one high the whole game, showing really no fear. Now, they'd roll and they'd disguise on third and passing some, but Carson Beck looked flustered, and Jalen Milroe looked unbelievably comfortable, almost to the point of boredom. The run game was working. The pass game was working, which means the play-action game was working. To be honest with you guys, the only thing that really didn't work for Alabama in the first half was when they tried a couple trick plays, and they really didn't have to. But Jalen Milroe, and I'm going to stick on Alabama for a second, one of the questions coming into this year, I had two of them. One is, are you going to be more than just an outfielder? Are you more than just a guy that can throw the deep ball from center field to home? Can you throw it from short to first consistently? Because to be successful and win a national championship, you're going to get a lot more ground balls to short that you got to throw the guy out at first than you're going to get plays at home where you got to gun a guy from center field like Acuna Jr. Obviously used in a baseball analogy there. And he has shown the ability, right, to not only be able to make the intermediate throw, but throw the layered throws, have a little bit of touch, right? Understand, hey, I can't just come out here and pump the fastball to everybody like Joe Milton. I've got to be able to throw the lollipop screen. I've got to drop it in the bucket. And the second question was, and we saw this, I think, last year with him early, is in a game like this, in these big games, is he going to go into it thinking, you know what? Nobody thinks I'm a pure passer. I'm going to prove it tonight. I'm just going to sit in the pocket and dissect you and show you what a passer I am. Or are you going to be smart and understand that the thing that can help your passing the most is your running ability and your ability to keep the play alive? I mean, I think at some point we got to start comparing. Everybody's comparing this guy. I heard Cam Newton. I don't think he's Cam Newton. I think he's more Lamar Jackson, right? We saw Lamar Jackson as a thrower get better and better and better. I think Jaden Daniels is a little bit of a different type of runner than what Jalen Milroe is. But the maturity to say, you know what? I am just going to use my skill set in whatever the defense gives me. I'm not going to try to prove to everybody that I'm Dan Marino or Drew Brees because, A, you don't have to, especially now in the NFL era we live in where the RPO game is used a lot. Quarterback's legs. Look at what Jaden Daniels is doing right now with the Redskins. Sorry, I'm not calling the Commanders. So on that side, I mean, Alabama, again, and the mental toughness, it's one thing, and you guys know this.
Yeah.
Mental toughness is one thing when you're dominating somebody and keeping the foot on the gas and stepping on their throat. It's a totally different type of mental toughness to blow that lead in a big game and then be able to come back and make a big play.
100%.
That, to me, said more about the mental toughness of Alabama than anything. And if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm not as upset about blowing the lead. I am more excited about we were able to answer with a guy that's basically 13 years old out there running around in a huge moment in a big game. And go on to win the game. That would give me more solace, and I think it says more about Kalen DeBoer than giving up the lead. And then on the Georgia side, quickly, not to be too long-winded, I think you saw Carson Beck really, really find something within himself. And, you know, we had people commenting, oh, they should bench him. Oh, they should bench him. And then all of a sudden he gets, oh, dude, it was, I mean, you know how fans are.
Right.
Anyway. But all of a sudden, you saw that flicker that you wanted to see if you were Georgia, right? They couldn't hit explosive plays. It seemed like throughout the whole beginning of the season, including the first half and into the third quarter, should have had one on the second play of the game. The guy dropped it. But if you're a Georgia fan, be upset. I get it, right? Be upset. But you need to realize what your team overcame to put them in that position. And you finally got some guys to make some explosive plays, which are going to give them confidence going forward. So, look, one team had to lose this game. It was a hell of a game. You couldn't have asked for more. But I think there's a lot of positives that both sides can take out of it. Obviously, Alabama with the win. But you guys know there's so much more at the granular level on who teams are and what they can become as they grow. And Georgia showed, look, we can be an elite team if we do what we're supposed to do.
Before you go, Joe, I just got to say one thing. Jake, you'll find this funny. I texted my 17-year-old nephew and said, what the F are you doing right now? Like during the game when Ryan Williams is going off, I really texted my 17-year-old nephew. It's like, bro, you make me feel bad about my family. You know, just like joking with him, you know. But that's Ryan Williams, man.
Blake, Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, put out a tweet this morning that said, and I want everybody just to think about this, in an era where you can play till you're 30, Cam Rising is 40 years old, you know, Alan Bowman is 2 months away from going to an assisted living center at Oklahoma State. If Ryan Williams leaves as a junior, he could play in the Senior Bowl as a 19-year-old.
Bro,
that's insane.
That is insane to think about, and it just goes to show you the maturity level, I think, of this kid and the physical ability to be able to take the hits as a 17-year-old you got to take. He's a witch, 100%. If he was in Salem in the 1700s or wherever, they'd have burned him. 100%.
I think what's crazy, too, to talk about Ryan Williams and then to put this other context in here, that we've got Jeremiah Smith, who's leading Ohio State in receiving right now. And then if we want to open this just a tiny bit more, Dylan Raiola is playing fantastic for Nebraska.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys. I can't remember the last time that we've had a freshman class that has come in and that has played this well. Like, this is an unbelievable blessing that we've been handed to get to see these guys play like they're seniors as true freshmen.
Yeah, and listen, I would throw Jordan Seaton from Colorado in there too.
Yeah,
the left tackle that they have. I think
Stewart
he's their
at
best
South Carolina
lineman as a young guy. So I agree, it's across the board. I've always said I think it's easier, maybe not the word. It's not as difficult when you're a wide receiver, right, or a DB or somebody to come in and play that early. The ones that like the Dylan Stewarts at South Carolina that you can just come in as a freshman and do what he can do on the line of scrimmage. Or at quarterback, like you mentioned, Raiola, because it's such a complex position. It's just goes to show you the level of training and the readiness, and we're seeing in the NFL too now with what C.J. Stroud's done. I mean, it's the game is puberty's hitting quicker. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and to that point, to Joe saying, like I have this I'm using later. The Wesco kid at Clemson, he's their leading receiver. Okay, the get at Michigan State. Look, Texas had two Ryan Wingo went off this weekend, and
Cam Coleman at Auburn.
Cam Coleman and Auburn, and and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But if he had, I mean, he might be just as impressive and would have gotten the status as anybody else. But Jake, here's the thing: it's up front with these freshmen. Like, brother, Will Campbell was getting, you know, with Dylan Stewart a couple weeks ago. So there, I mean, look, this class,
he's a freak.
He's a freak of nature. Look, I'm not trying to be that guy of, hey,
say
I talked to this
say
guy.
it. Say it. Who's he remind you of? Say it.
I don't know who he reminds me of, but I asked some people around LSU. The O line called him Von Miller.
He reminds. I'm telling you right now, when I watch him, he reminds me of. Do you remember Irv Smith
Bruce
from
Irving
Bruce Irving from West Virginia?
Yes.
Go back and watch his tape. Now, he was a JUCO guy, right? But if you go back and watch his tape, even in junior college, there's some freaky similarities in how good
I
these
agree
guys
with
are.
that.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.
I agree. That's insane. Joe, you're what else you want to get to here?
So I wanted to jump to, and I know that there's a lot of positives that we could take away from this weekend, but the Auburn situation, needing your take on this, Jake, it's kind of, I don't want to say that the wheels are coming off, but right now it's a bad situation. That's a game that they should have won over Oklahoma. I am not for, as a guy who I played FCS ball, but like as somebody who's played before, him throwing guys under the bus in any degree. I know that he also took some of the blame after he did so. I'm not a fan of that stuff. What's the temperature in your eyes on what's happening with Hugh Freeze at Auburn right now? Is there any way for them to recover and for this thing to bounce back?
Multiple things can be true at once. I think sometimes, and especially in sports media, people are like, oh, well, it's just this one thing and it has to be this one thing, or it's this other thing. It can be multiple things going on. Just to start off, anybody who thinks Hugh Freeze should be fired right now has lost their mind. I understand there's people that should be upset. Hell, I'm upset, right? Nobody is happy with what's going on. All right, so let's put that there. I'm not in the Hugh Freeze should be fired. He can't do it. I think eventually he's going to figure it out, but there has to be some sort of proof of concept that happens on the field for Auburn to be able to recruit at the highest level of efficiency. And we have not seen proof of concept. The thing that bothers me is, and it's multiple things, is there seems to be a chronic illness in the Auburn football program. And yes. I'm not a doctor, not smart enough to be one, probably not even smart enough to play one on TV. But I was looking up, what is the fear of choking? It's called pseudodysphagia, and it's the fear of choking. And anybody that's ever played a sport or done anything competitive in life understand that if you fear that you're going to screw up and you're so worried about screwing up, you are going to screw up. Yeah. And it's not just Peyton Thorne at Auburn. It's been the defense at points against Arkansas, rushing 3 on a big down and getting beat deep, roughing the passer. This past weekend, it was the special teams, right? You got a kid in there in Towns Magoo, which I get Auburn's kicker was hurt, but you got to make a 27-yard field goal. You get 2 cracks at it. Auburn is finding different ways to choke, which lets me know there is some sort of something going on where there is fear in that program of, please, God, don't let it come down to me. Please don't let me be the guy with the ball with the game on the line. Please don't let me have to make a kick. That's what it seems like. And as a guy who played and coached in Division I for a decade, I only know one way to get that out. And you've got to get the older guys out. Like, it's the older guys are the leaders, right? And now it's to the point where you're worried that the Peyton Thorns and some of these other guys are going to poison the younger guys. That, hey, this is just who Auburn is, the choke artists. That's who they are. So it's gotten to the point now where we've seen it so many times. And Peyton Thorne, I had somebody on social media, I went out and said, God, man, Peyton Thorne is he finds ways to choke almost to the point where you think it's on purpose. We're like, is he a plant from a rival team? And obviously I was joking, but the person said, Jake, How he had his best game of his career at Auburn. How could you say that? And my answer was exactly. Exactly.
Right.
The best game of your career at Auburn was a game in which you threw a pick six that lost us the game at the end. And you lost the game.
Well,
so
not only that, they came back to the same play twice, and they baited him on the pick.
They got him twice. He should have thrown a pick the first time. He should have thrown three. Right? He should have thrown three, and this game he got away with it. Kind of like Miller Moss got away with some stuff against LSU that he didn't get away with against Michigan. But Peyton Thorne just does it every game. So going forward, I don't know how, if you're a player in that locker room and Peyton Thorne is a captain, how you could ever tell me anything and me listen to you. Because leadership is about more. There's guys that are walk-ons that become captains, that are leaders that don't play that much, but they're not expected to be the guy that leads on the field. You cannot continue to blow it on the field and be a captain and tell people what to do. You can't be the salesman in the office that screws up all the big sales and then tries to train all the salesmen. You can't do it. That's not the way the world works. The young guys, I think, need to become the leaders. That's what needs to happen. You're seeing that a little bit in this recruiting class coming up with Alvin Henderson, them saying, we're going to fix this. The young guys are going to come in here and fix this. But going forward, Blake, I put it to you guys. I'll ask you a question on your own show. If you're Hugh Freeze, you're so stuck between a rock and a hard place because you didn't get a quarterback out of the portal. Do you just keep Peyton Thorne out there and watch it continue to fall apart in multiple ways? Or do you put Walker White in, right, who you're hoping can be the guy for the future, against Georgia in his first game on the road, and they're pissed off after the Alabama game?
Yeah, I wouldn't throw him in that situation.
No, it's tough. I don't know if you're Hugh Freeze. As far as the press conference thing, Joe, here's where I'm at with it. I used to always ask myself, is what I'm going to say going to help my team or hurt my team? Right? I like being transparent. We get on coaches about not telling us what they really think or whatever. But then when they do, we get mad at them because everything that he said was the truth. If you go back and watch the tape, guys are running wide open that are getting missed. Decision-making and the reads are getting screwed up. And in pressure moments, you're finding a way to fail. But it all falls back on the head coach. So what do you get out of it by saying that? You don't get – nobody in the locker room says, man, I'm really glad he talked about Peyton Thorne screwing up, right? It just doesn't help your team. So to me, it's kind of I'd rather say less, right, than say everything. And I love being transparent, and that's great. But I used to ask myself, is what I'm saying going to help or hurt my team?
Well, and we've all
it's more of a locker room. It's like more of a locker room thing to say. Like you come into the meeting room, lay into your guy in the meeting room. Like that stuff, I think is completely fine. It's just selling your guy out in public like that, and then allowing Hugh Freeze got to know that they're going to take that quote and run with it.
Well, when you're winning, when you're winning, and you come out and say we're not playing good here, everybody's like, "Oh, look at the transparency." They're like, "Oh, we love holding players accountable here. We're 4-0. We're holding guys accountable." When you're 2-3, and you come out and do that. Because again, and then you come out and he says, well, what are you going to say to Peyton Thorne? Oh, well, I love him, and okay, to me, you're saying, all right, this is going to help my team more than me coming out and blasting him. And people are like, oh yeah. Oh, you really love him. That's why you didn't go get a transfer portal out of the quarterback or a quarterback out of the transfer portal or whatever. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But if you win, you can say whatever. You can say whatever if you win. That's why it's the cure all.
I think about just my only thing with them, and not saying this because me and Joe had this conversation without you being here, Jake. What I would look at them and say is, all right, so let's look at it from a 10,000-foot view. You're 25th in the country in total offense. You're actually, if you take away the turnovers, you're number 2 in the country in red zone offense. You're number 1 or number 2, depending on who you look at, in red zone defense. Jake, they're finding ways to lose. Yes. But I'm thinking, like, how are you that successful offensively and things you're doing defensively? And I'm thinking to myself, you talked about decision-making. That's what it comes down to. I mean, 10-plus turnovers in 3 games, nobody can overcome that. So the question is, how are you in this many close games with that many turnovers? I don't know, Jake, if there would be a situation where many teams, like even Georgia, Jake, they had 4. And they barely could overcome the situation. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, I know that you're not just a quarterback away, but man, yet that offensive line, I mean, look, man, they're getting push. So I do wonder if they've cleaned some things up. I think that they're in some good places. It's just the decision-making that's been so bad, in my opinion.
No, and that's Blake, that's the hardest part. If it looked like Iowa's offense from last year and you're like, look, we just don't have the guys to do it. Like that's one thing, right? If you're just getting stoned all the time, like not high, but like you're not able to move the ball, you can tell that, hey, we just don't have the personnel to do it. That would be one thing. That's not the case, right? But all that stuff at the end of the day, Blake, I mean, you look at Oklahoma, they didn't have the greatest day offensively or defensively, but winners find a way to win. Losers find a way to lose. All that other stuff is just salad dressing, man. It's the whipped cream on the ice cream. It's not the ice cream or the cake or whatever. To me right now, Auburn, when you look at the numbers, is that girl when you walk in the barn from 15 feet away, she looks gorgeous. Like, oh my goodness. But then all of a sudden you get close and you realize she has 4 layers of makeup on. And the first time she jumps in the pool, she looks like Quasimodo when she comes out. That's who Auburn is. And right now, Auburn is turning into the slump buster of the SEC, right?
Yeah.
Man, you had a tough – you weren't able to talk that 8.5 into being your girlfriend, right? Georgia, Alabama. But don't worry, that 4.5 whose dad invented fruit roll-ups and they're super rich, right? And she, makes some mean spaghetti and's got a good personality. She'll be there to make you feel better for a week. So here, come on, Auburn. Like all this other like yards gained, all this – doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You either win the game. It's a zero-sum game. Yes. You either win it or you lose it. I would rather Auburn look awful for 3.5 quarters and win the game than look great for 3.5 quarters and lose the game.
Right.
So you're right. I agree with you. If you didn't feel so close, it wouldn't hurt so bad. But look, Hugh Freeze and them, like the time management at the end of that game, like he got rid of a lot of guys on staff coming into this year and brought in new guys. I was like, we're going to fix it. We're going to clean it up. Like I think that the team's been poorly coached. Look at the special teams. I'll do it for half. I mean, it's to the point now where the coaches look below average and the playmaking ability in big moments looks below average. And that's winning fentanyl. It's just that's what it is.
Jake, I kind of want to leave this up to you. And I know this is an open-ended question, but me and you have done this a lot. When you look around college football, who are you most surprised about, or who do you think is one of the more dangerous teams in college football?
Well, I would say from a surprising standpoint, I mean, 2 teams, and they're both in the Big 12, BYU and Colorado. If you look at what BYU is doing, and I know it hasn't been against the greatest competition, this is a total 180 of what I thought was going to happen with them this year. I thought Satake may end up getting let go because Retzlaff was a turnover machine. They looked real deficient up front at times last year and defensively struggled to tackle in space. And you see what a little bit of confidence does. I think that win against SMU gave them something a little bit, right? And all it takes for an 18 to 22-year-old, or in BYU's case, a 27 to 30-year-old, I guess, is confidence, right? Momentum is a real thing, and it's not just during the game. It carries over, and all of a sudden you start thinking, hey, Doug, we can do this. Like, we're supposed to win. And that's a totally different feeling. And when the team starts catching that, it's a good thing to catch. Colorado's another one up front going in. I think them beating UCF on the road was probably the biggest credibility builder, at least with me, with Colorado.
To really interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
This is Deion Sanders' best win, without question.
100%. I don't care what anybody else says. Like you went on the road, and look, UCF isn't dynamo on both sides of the line of scrimmage, but you not only were able to stalemate them, you handled them at the line of scrimmage. And the Big 12 is down, fellas. The Big 12 is not what a lot of people thought it was going to be. I'm not saying Colorado's going to win it, but they daggum sure got a better chance than I thought by a mile where we're sitting right now than at the beginning of the year. But as far as dangerous, I mean, I could sit here and say, oh, Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia. This Kentucky team, or excuse me, this Tennessee team, to me, the more I look around and I watch them move around and run around and I watch the depth they have on defense, I think we could be looking at possibly the best defense in the country with Tennessee right now.
Yeah,
they've got everything in this secondary that people were kind of worried about has been able to grow because the front seven's so good, right? A great front seven can hide an average secondary as they get better. And you see that confidence build up. And it's just a matter of time before Nico starts freaking out. Like, it's just a matter of time. He is learning while winning and understanding, hey, I hate to use another baseball analogy, I'm not going to go out there every Saturday and strike out 10 guys and everything's going to be working, the fastball, the slider, the curveball, the changeup. Sometimes you got to go out there and win with your second best pitch and strike out 4 guys and go 6 2/3 and give up 2 runs. And that's what he did against Oklahoma. So this Tennessee team, to me, boys, I don't think it's just can they possibly get there? That game against Alabama, man, at home here in a couple weeks, that we're gonna really know about Tennessee then. But I'm a looking and I'm a liking.
Well, I think they get. I love this matchup for them this week because Taylor Green, although I think is very bad at throwing the football, another game where he's right at or below 50%. He's an unreal athlete, unbelievable, just running the football. Jake, if they can stop him running the football, they can stop Milroe. Yeah. And I think that's a really good look ahead.
And that'll give you, Blake, I agree with you mostly there. The only difference is Milroe's throwing ability, I think, kind of stunts your growth a little bit defensively, as opposed to saying, look, we're just going to go back and get this cat. Taylor Green, you're going to have to beat us with your arm, bud. Jalen Milroe can beat you with his arm. But what I'm interested in, this is when I'm going to know. Can Tennessee, against quality offensive lines, get there with 4? Right? If you can get there with 4, then you have a chance against Milroe. If you start having to rob Peter to pay Paul in any stretch of the imagination, whether that's just rushing 3 and playing drop coverage or bringing extra guys and playing skinny in the back end, he's going to gut you. But if you can get there with 4, you give yourself a chance to play even with him, and he's still going to get you some, but not as much as other teams.
Jake, last question that I had
go ahead,
on the other side of this conversation. Is there a team that you think reality is going to set in at some point? One of the team that you think's a bit overhyped at the current moment? We're starting to hit that midway point. We're getting close to really knowing who the top teams are.
Well, I think Missouri's one to look at. And again, there's parts of their defense that has been better than what I thought it was going to be. We talked about them as kind of in the same spot as Tennessee and Texas A&M a little bit going into the year. We got a feeling who we know tier 1 is, but who's on the top of tier 2 that can move to tier 1, right? It was like, could Tennessee or LSU or A&M, right? Or Missouri. I'm still not sold on them being up there. Tennessee has moved up to me. I think Ole Miss has moved down, right? I think Tennessee has replaced Ole Miss. So I would say Missouri. And I know they beat Michigan State to death this weekend. Something about Ohio State and their offensive line worries me. It just worries me.
Joe, I told Jake.
The more I watch this Michigan team play, and I know it wasn't pretty against Minnesota, and this Oregon team starting to feel like, okay, they're starting to get rolling a little bit. They don't look exactly how we thought. I still don't trust Will Howard that much, guys. That offensive line plus Will Howard throwing to win a game, right? Throwing to win a game. I'm a little concerned about Ohio State there, but golly, do they got some weapons around him though? It'll take a lot to screw that up. But I'm not as, hey man, it's Ohio State and Bama right now. I think Ohio State is I have them, I believe, third or fourth in my top 10 right now, but I got to see a little bit more from them.
Their guard play's got to get better, to your point. And Joe and I talked about that a lot during the offseason. Jake Crain and Company, they know where to find you just in case they don't. Tell them everything that you guys are doing.
Yeah, just look up in the sky at night and see the signal. No, you go to YouTube. It's Crain and Company, Crain and Company. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that stuff. Basically, if it's streaming, Roku, all that, you can find us as well. Go live 2 to 3:30 p.m. Central each weekday, taking live calls and got a live chat. That's always a lot of fun, whether you agree or disagree. And I hope it's disagree some, because if we all agree, this would be boring as hell. Appreciate you guys. Love what you're doing. Really enjoy the show.
Of course.
And always down to hop on and chop it up, and regardless of how bad Auburn is.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you. Jake Crain from Crain.
Always a pleasure.